was up about 40% year over year in March. So some of that obviously was the NCAA tournament, but a lot of that is because DraftKings and FanDuel were coming to town and bringing a lot of money with them. It was about $87 million was bet in the month of March, which is not only a March record, but it's a record for Arkansas in general. And it was really interesting to note too, DraftKings and FanDuel were only active for about 12 days.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
There is a pick tonight that Gabe has that, to some degree, I find completely outrageous. Then I looked at it a second longer, and it might be a really smart angle.
I like to test them a little bit.
I like that.
To test them a little bit.
I like that a lot.
Oh, okay, you don't know? You don't know this team name? You should. You're in the sports business.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
When Ruben Bain's name got called, this is the greatest moment, one of the greatest moments of your life. You're going to look back at this tape all the time and watch when you got drafted and had his arm length. I said, are you shitting me? You're supposed to have a highlight here, not a low light. I was like, oh my God, man, that's insane. That was just incredible. And I thought it was so classless.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
You have something that does not warrant tinkering with, but you have the perfect sporting event. And all you're gonna do by watering it down with more bad teams, less competitive teams, more blowouts, is to ruin something that we love.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome to another edition of Outspoken. I'm Dan Sileo. What an absolutely insane weekend that we're watching in sports here. You got Major League Baseball. We're past the 30 mark, right? 30 game mark. Major League Baseball looks right now that there's a couple teams that are popping their heads up. There's only a few teams in the American League up over 500. Also, we have NBA playoffs. We have NHL playoffs going on. Couple game sevens today, too, by the way, in the NHL, especially the one in Tampa. Plus, we just saw a stakes race. We saw the Kentucky Derby. We'll have Pat Day on with us a little bit later on, the legendary jockey, and we'll talk to him on what went down with that race. That'll be in hour number 2. But we got to start off with this. You know, the National Football League is putting out and putting on all these OTAs right now for rookies. Guys that just got drafted a week ago are now showing up to their respective teams, and you are going to be inundated with all the plays and everything with all 32 teams. So you get a rookie camp. You're going to get a chance to look at some of the guys that you went out and you drafted. There's a storyline going on right now in Baltimore, and it's with Diego Pavia, the former Vanderbilt quarterback. And without a doubt, folks, this is one of the more interesting stories. Like a year ago, Shedeur Sanders was the story. Now, Diego Pavia. He signs a 3-year contract, a UDFA contract, that is an undrafted free agent. Look, the chances of this guy at 5'10", making an NFL roster and playing quarterback in the National Football League is very slim. And it's not really because he's 5'10". It's because of character, and he's a tool. Here's a guy again, and I got to give him credit. He did a great job at elevating Vanderbilt. The Commodores were one of the worst programs in all of college football. Their history says that. Not very good, right? They were the doormats for years in the Southeastern Conference. He was a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. What happened when he didn't win the Heisman Trophy? F the Heisman voters, okay? Hey, look, I love competitive people more than you know, okay? I do. I think being competitive and being a tool is very slim. And again, not that much of a difference when you're talking about being competitive. Being competitive is important. Being a tool is another thing. Then he doesn't get drafted. Comes out and says, F the NFL. Okay, well, kid, bottom line here, the National Football League doesn't need you. You could be colorful, and if you're Aaron Rodgers, and you're a 4-time winner of an MVP. You can't be colorful when you're a guy sitting in a strip club making it rain and think that's cool. They're looking for leadership. They're looking for players that are going to elevate people around them. You're looking for a guy that's going to be a character guy, and you're looking for somebody that's going to motivate men to be able to win football games. Truly one of the greats is in the NFL. It's in Baltimore, and that is Lamar Jackson. I love Lamar Jackson. He's one of my favorite players. Here's why I love him. When he was initially brought into the league, and he was asked at the combines to run a 40-yard dash, there were people like Bill Polian who were saying, kid, there's no way you're going to make it in the NFL as a quarterback. You better try out for wide receiver. Tom Telesco even said that. The one-time former GM of the Los Angeles Chargers said the same thing. Can you imagine? You're telling a 2-time MVP, hey, you might want to change positions because you don't have a shot to make it in the National Football League as a starting quarterback. What did he do? He goes out, he ends up winning 2 Most Valuable Player awards. Because why? He's got character. Kid, I don't mind the fact that you got this great passion for the game. I think Diego Pavia, without a doubt, has an opportunity to at least right the ship. Now, look, do I think he makes it as a 5'10 quarterback? If that, he's not Doug Flutie. Organizations are looking for character. Organizations are looking for playmakers. Organizations are looking for difference makers. Is he a difference maker? Look, I compare him a little bit to Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow is arguably the greatest college football quarterback I've ever seen. I actually voted for him for the Heisman Trophy. When you look at what he did in college, is there any quarterback ever that moved the needle with the national titles, the Heisman Trophy, constantly being in the conversation? But once he got to the National Football League, what happened? We all figured out he couldn't play in the league. Being a college football star and being an NFL star, all you have to do is look to Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes was at Texas Tech, 1-0. He goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. He ends up becoming one of the great winners of all time. Look at Josh Allen. Josh Allen was in Wyoming. He was doing nothing. His best year was his junior year before he came out and went into the National Football League. Diego Pavia is a heck of a college football story. A great college football story. I do not believe that this is going to be a great NFL story. You're looking for guys of character. Like I said, you could be colorful and you could be Aaron Rodgers, but without a doubt, make no mistake about it, kid, you got a tough climb if you're going to make it in the National Football League. All right, so we got a story here. Now, we're going to have a little fun here, okay? First pitches. Now, I had a chance to be a guy that got on the mound and had a first pitch at a San Diego Padres game a couple of years ago. So Malik Willis was at a Marlins game. He was invited to be a guy to throw out the first pitch. He's the new starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. So I want you to help me out here and be the gauge on who had the worst first pitch. I'm always looking for guys that have a bad first pitch. So, okay, guys, roll it. Let's see. Here's Malik Willis here on the hill getting ready to throw out his first pitch. All right, here he is. He's towing the rubber. By the way, that's not as easy as it seems. Whoa, he airmails it. Kills a guy in the first section. I'm kidding. All right. So again, not very good. Now, let's bring in my first pitch. So this is Big Sales throwing the first pitch. Here we go right here against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, you tell me who had the worst first pitch. All right, here's Big Sales. Here we go. All right. Now, wait a second here. You see that there? At least it got across the plate. Okay? So, by the way, it was Star Wars night. And I told somebody there that, I had a little niche in my shoulder here. So I'm always looking for like a guy with the worst first pitch. That's a lot of fun there. But again, that's not as easy as you think. Throwing that first pitch out, man. I got on the mound. I told everyone, and too, somebody goes like this. They go, what happened? I said, Robert, my producer, I said, let's put out the Big Sales first pitch there when I was there doing that against the AZ Diamondbacks there. So, and then I think, here we go. One more time. There you go, right there. Ready? Look, okay. Now, I bet you Craig Carton, who we're going to have coming up in a minute, there's no way that he threw a better first pitch than that over there with the New York Mets. All right. I'm not sure. So we're going to find out a little bit later on there about him there too. So end of the day there. Hey, one more thing here again too. Great weekend in sports. We saw the Kentucky Derby. We're going to have Pat Day on with us a little bit later on. We're going to talk to him about what makes that race one of the greatest races of all time in American sports. We were talking to the folks there saying, again, 150,000 folks were there. Pat says that this is the most difficult of all stakes races. Preakness is coming up, Belmont with their sweeping turns. We'll find out whether or not we see a Triple Crown this year, so we'll get down that lane here. But don't forget my great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the #1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason. Folks, I tell you this without a doubt, Morgan & Morgan has been the #1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason. It's because they win. Family owned, family run. They started this company over 25 years ago. Ultima and John Morgan giving you, there's no firm like it. Folks, I tell you about the story with the family in Pennsylvania, $650K. They got nearly $30 million in settlement. Or the family down in Florida who was offered $350,000. They ended up getting nearly $12 million in settlement. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. That's forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529 and do me a favor. You tell them Big Sales sent you. All right. We're going to talk some sports with our friend Craig Carton. Don't forget, too, you can catch Craigie 11 to noon on SportsGrid Monday through Friday, and his fabulous afternoon show in WFAN 2 to 7. They're Monday through Friday. Craig Carton next, right here on SportsGrid. Absolutely one of my favorite sports talk hosts in America today, and I think he is the best sports talk host in America. Don't forget, you can catch him every single Monday through Friday here on SportsGrid, 11 to noon, and also his WFAN show, 2 to 7, Monday through Friday in New York City. He is Craig Carton. He joins us now here on the program. Craigie, how you doing, man? Appreciate you doing this. Like riding a bike, huh? Being back in afternoon drive in New York. Plus, you're double dipping now, right?
It's yeah, I'm double dipping. Yeah, double dipping. Nickels and dimes and quarters. Yeah, the podcast with SportsGrid, 11 to 12 every day. And I apologize for my voice. I went to a wedding party on Friday night, and the DJ, who's great, was playing music so loud, and I'm a jackass. I know I can't talk in places like that, but when you can't help it. So yeah. Okay. I'm going to yell about why my Knicks and the Sixers, but I know SportsGrid's a fabulous company. I know Morgan & Morgan is one of the best national. Can we put together a couple dollars, guys, and get Dan a new shirt? It's the same shirt every show, every Saturday, every Sunday. So either you have a lot of those shirts or your wife does the laundry way too often.
I think it's the latter, bro.
We can't get this money.
Absolutely, man. I know. And by the way, folks, I wear this shirt for a reason, just to piss Craigie off here. I love it here. All right. So let's get into this here. Man, I got to get your takeaway on the Vrabel Rossini story here. I mean, do you believe there'll be any collateral damage to the Patriots this year? I mean, as you know, Craig, noise hurts a lot of football teams. When you get too much noise in the locker room, and you got a story like this, do you think there's any collateral damage to the Patriots repeating as AFC champions with this story, and it affects Vrabel?
Yeah, well, look, let me go backwards on that. I don't think the Patriots are going to, repeat as AFC champions because I don't think they're going to be a very six-win team. Obviously, even a lot of credit for what they did last year. No one saw it coming. The young quarterback, Drake May, blah, blah, blah. So I just don't think they're a very good football team, and I don't think they replaced Stephon Diggs either. So I have to keep that to the side. In regards to the Vrabel situation, how it impacts them, I'm not 100% sure that the next bomb that drops in this story, because it seems like every week there's some new kind of wrinkle to it, isn't going to stop them from making a decision about Mike Vrabel's future as the Patriots head coach. I know right now it seems like he survived it. I saw that video of the season ticket holder luncheon where they all gave him a standing ovation because we as fans, at the end of the day, are sheep. No matter who we root for, that guy got us back to a Super Bowl. I don't care who he might be sleeping with. I want that guy to be my head coach. That's the Patriot mindset, and I get that. But, man, this is the craziest story I've seen in a long time in the sports world because every week it seems like there's a new iteration of something between these two. And then you have the story last week where we thought that Diana had saved an old man's life by having a guy lift her on top of a car that had been flipped over in an accident and rescue this 78-year-old guy from the car and gets the dog out of the car. And now we find out while she was there, she was holding on to the dog leash and never once jumped on top of the car or got this man out of the car. So this is a really strange story. I think the way the media's covered it is very strange as well. And my gut is that the reason it's been kind of poo-pooed and quieted in a lot of places is that this was a very poorly kept secret amongst networks and teams and coaches and players.
Do you believe, Craig, that this is one of the reasons why he was fired in Tennessee? Because the year previous, he won the NFL Coach of the Year award when he was there in Tennessee. I mean, we all said this. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Mike Vrabel's fired over one bad season, and he had done so much. I mean, you were going to playoffs with Ryan Tannehill. So you just said it. Maybe this was a story that's been going on. And by the way, one of the big things that people are just finding out too, she covered the Titans when she was in Tennessee, and she was covering Mike Vrabel. Maybe this is one of the reasons also that, the Tennessee Titans ended up blowing him out there.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's possible, right? The guy had a great run in Tennessee, like you said, went to the playoffs a lot without having a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And then you start connecting the story she broke while he was in Tennessee that involved him, involved the player personnel decisions, until someone in Tennessee comes out from their management and says, by the way, that's why we fired him, 3 years ago, whatever it was. It kind of leaves it up to that kind of conjecture. If you told me that's why it happened, I certainly would believe it, but there's no concrete evidence to point to that just yet.
Craig, I'll ask you the last question on this. Do you think he should be fired? You think Bob Kraft should parachute in and replace the guy?
Based on the information we have now, probably not. I think they have different jobs. If you want to have journalistic integrity and you're allegedly getting stories by sleeping around to get them, that is fireable these days, right? I made the joke the other day that she was just trying to be like the two greatest investigative reporters of all time, and that's Woodward and Bernstein. Woodward and Bernstein took down a presidency, Richard Nixon and Watergate. And I hope you'll laugh at this because I think it's funny. I think she learned from them. And what I say that I mean is Woodward and Bernstein had an inside source. What was the name of the inside source?
The inside source was, God, all the president's men. What was that inside source? Help me, Craig.
Yeah, Deep Throat.
Deep Throat. Oh, Manon. Yes, it was Deep Throat, who ended up becoming, by the way,
right,
allegedly the assistant FBI guy.
And what do they teach in every journalism school in America? Woodward and Bernstein, Watergate, Nixon, Deep Throat. How can you blame a young intrepid reporter for not taking it literally?
Only Craig Carton could connect the dots that way. Without a doubt there. Craigie, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the NBA playoffs here and your Knicks here coming up in a second. And also David Stearns and the Mets. We're going to get David Stearns on, believe it or not, next week. I know you talk to him a lot. I know you're connected in with the Mets. And also we'll talk a little New York Giants here with our friend Craig Carton. Don't forget, again, folks, you can check out the Craig Carton Show right here on SportsGrid, 11 to noon, and also his fabulous show on WFAN, 2 to 7. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll talk NBA playoffs, NFL as well. Folks, do me a favor. Make sure you check out that great show, and we will talk again with Craig Carton. We come back out of the timeout, and we'll talk about the Phillies. We'll talk about the Mets. We'll also talk about the Knicks, and we will talk about the 76ers. We'll do that next. We'll keep it right here on SportsGrid. Our good friend here, Craig Carton, joins us here on SportsGrid here. Craigie, let's get into the NBA. And before we talk about 76ers and Knicks, were you shocked that Embiid played the way he did when he came back? And were you shocked on what they did to Boston? I know Jason Tatum was trying to come back from that injury, but were you surprised that Boston got taken down in this series?
Yeah, especially because they were up 3-1 in the series. Obviously, Tatum not playing Game 7 is the thing that cost them Game 7 at home. But no one's ever disputed how good Joel Embiid is when he decides to play. And that's my issue with Joel Embiid, among other things, is that he's missed more games than he's played in, right? He's missed almost 500 basketball games over the course of his most likely Hall of Fame career. He's also the filthiest, dirtiest player in the NBA today, but he's unstoppable. He's a great basketball player when he decides to be, but I want you guys to watch the series against the Knicks. I will tell you right now that Joel Embiid will spend as much time on the ground as he does standing up on his own 2 feet. The Knicks beat the Sixers in 5 or 6, but I'm not going to tell you I disrespect them, because when that team is healthy, Paul George, Maxey, Embiid, and the rookie VJ Edgecombe, that is a very, very tough team to beat. But let's not count the Knicks out. The Knicks are a better basketball team.
Hey, they came back, right, on the Hawks. They rallied back. Were you surprised a little bit on how they kind of were wobbling a little bit against the Hawks? They end up coming back and taking that series, but are they riding the ship at least getting into this series against the Sixers?
Yeah, look, the Knicks are the Knicks. Like, they're always going to have that one game that doesn't make any sense, right? And that happened against Atlanta. You can say 2 games like that happened against Atlanta. Game 2, they blew a 12-point lead in the 4th quarter at home. And then in game 3, they're down the entire game, take a 3-point lead with a minute to go, and then can't close it out. They were so much better than Atlanta talent-wise. I didn't see a 90-point win coming, obviously, in game 6. But the Knicks also figured out what the right medicine is for their best basketball. And it took them 85 games to figure it out. But it's the pick and roll. It's the inside-outside Brunson, and, of course, Karl Anthony Towns, who had a great series. And then everybody forgets about OG Anunoby, who I thought was the MVP of the series, the depth at guard that they have. And while Embiid represents the best big man they're going to play against en route to an NBA Finals, the Knicks are just a better team, a deeper team, the best 4th quarter team in basketball. And I think outside of the Thunder, the best defensive team left in the NBA playoffs.
Craig, I saw on your radio show when you were on WFAN, you had Adam Silver. I love Adam Silver. I know him a long time. The tanking, and also, you have to have the 65-game rule. Do you believe in your heart he's doing a good job at running the NBA? I mean, you've got to put all these kind of like fail-safes to get the players to want to play. And then you've got this anti-tanking thing that you got to try to come up with to stop these teams from tanking.
Yeah.
Do you think he's done a good job running the league?
Yeah, I think he's done a good job. I think he made a decision early on, to be a players-oriented commissioner in an era of player empowerment like we've never seen before. I think that's probably a smart move. If you don't have the players buying into what you want to do, it's hard to get things done. I don't blame the commissioner on guys not wanting to play. I don't blame the commissioner on teams not wanting to win games. I blame the players. I blame the teams. I think the 65-game rule is ridiculous. I think if we're giving players the opportunity to miss, 17 games out of 82 every single year and still qualify for Supermax contracts and all NBA teams and all the other awards that go along with it, then why not just pay them less? Like, if you don't want to play, then I think we shouldn't have to pay you to sit on the bench. And the fact that the NBA has bent over backwards to support the players and their desire to miss essentially 20% of the season and still be eligible for all the postseason awards and the money that comes along with it, I think that's a mistake, because we are in an era now where players don't want to play the entire season. And that's every sport, not just the NBA. But we as fans, we have to pay for tickets every single night. So if I buy a ticket and the average American family can afford to go to what? Maybe 1 game a year. And if that's the game that I can afford to go to, and I'm going to bring my wife and my kids who adore basketball and idolize these guys, and that's the day that the superstar player on either team, wants to take one of his 17 games off, I'm going to be pissed as a fan because I don't get a discount on that ticket. And I think the players have completely lost sight of the fan experience. And I think that's why their relationship with the fans is at an all-time low.
Absolutely. I mean, Craig, you got to coax people to play, which is incredible. I mean, you got to, it's ridiculous.
And by
and
the
absolutely.
Way, it's like they're making minimum wage. Like, you're making $50 million a year. All we're saying to you is play 2 to 3 basketball games a week. Like, we're not asking for that much.
Absolutely. Craigie, appreciate you, brother. 11 to noon, right here on SportsGrid. Thank you, brother. Rick Barry's next, right here. on SportsGrid.
CBS Sports wrote an article about how Swarsby entering rehab has impacted not Texas Tech's ability now to win games, but their odds. I know it's a story, I get it, but when you're talking about a young kid, a 20-something-year-old kid who's going to gambling rehab, can you leave out the odds and how it impacts the odds on Texas Tech?
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Manager, hitting coach, bench coach, assistant hitting coach, third base coach, hitting strategy, and game planner here. It's almost like a line change in hockey, Craig.
Some of these questions that have to be asked, Donnie, would be, what did you think a month ago, Donnie, right? Like right before the season started, did you think that these coaches were the answer to your season? Because if not, why did you wait all off season to make a change like that?
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Teams are going to be tanking. Now, instead of 14 tanking, 18 will be tanking. You know what solves this show? Keep it at 18 teams. All 18. One ping pong ball. No more, no less. Don't care about the record. You know what that solves, Joe? Tanking. They won't tank anymore. There's no incentive to tank. This gives you incentive to tank. You idiot.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Number one, who asked for this? Nobody, but nobody asked for a bump up in the number of teams in both the men and the women's basketball tournament from 68, including the 4 play-in teams, to 76. And by the way, it looks like it is a near-done deal. ESPN and ABC News reported this morning that's very close to being done. It could be announced by the end of this week.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Let me tell you, one of the top 25 players in the history of the sport, and I don't think people say this enough. He's truly one of the great Hall of Famers here. Rick Barry joins us, and we love talking NBA basketball. Rick, when you see the playoffs, I mean, you got to love it because this is championship time right now, or maybe you have a different opinion of today's players when you're watching NBA playoffs.
Oh, well, I'm impressed with the athleticism of today's players, but they are so fortunate to have the ability to utilize technology to such a degree. We had nothing. People ask me, I said, what did they do for you when you played? And I said, nothing. I mean, I'm serious. Absolutely nothing, Dan. We had no strength coach, agility coach, dietitian. The way we traveled, we rented cars and drove ourselves around. It was a different world, totally. And so they're very fortunate to have all of that. And as a result, you're seeing these incredible athletes doing amazing things. But the thing about the playoffs which I never really liked and still don't to this day, is that all of a sudden there's a different rule book that I've yet to see in all the years I've been around the game. Seems like there's a different rule book that the officials use as far as what they allow and what they don't allow. And that annoys me. It really annoys me that they allow the game to become overly physical, because that does not require skill, talent, or ability. You're giving a distinct advantage to the less skilled player by allowing the game to become physical. This is not, the Roman Colosseum and the gladiators are playing and fighting to the death. You just don't want to allow that to happen. I don't know why you want to do that. And if you look and see statistically, the majority of players in the history of the league, their statistics in the playoffs are not as good as during the regular season. Why? Because they allow the physicality of the game and have an impact on it. So that's my big pet peeve. I'll get that out of the way. It'll be that to the day I die, because it's not going to change. But still, the players are amazing. But the things that happen sometimes are so astonishing. Look at some of the games that took place. They have some of these incredibly competitive games. Then they have games where it's like almost embarrassing. A 51-point defeat in a playoff game? I mean, a team scores 4 field goals in a second half when you've got a 20-something point lead with a chance to move on. I mean, that's why I always tell people, always expect the unexpected when you watch sports, not just basketball, in any sport. That's what makes sports so, I think, appealing to people. Why people love to bet on the different things, because you really never know.
So do you agree then, Rick, when you get into the second season and you get into the playoffs, you may be one of the more skilled players and one of the more skilled teams, but are you saying that the referees, they kind of equalize it by doing that and taking maybe the skill set away from that team. And they're looking for like the NFL parity and all that. You think they take the skill out of the game?
Well, I think they do. I don't know if they do it intentionally, but they allow the game to become much more physical. I mean, I always used to say, I say, can I see the new rule book we're playing by? What was a foul during the regular season seems not to be a foul in the playoffs. I mean, how many times have you watched and see? And two guys collide, they both wind up on the court, and the whistle doesn't blow. I mean, I'm sorry. It either had to be a charge or a block. I mean, it can't be a no call. And I just think they get hung up on this thing, and you hear it all the time. The officials don't want to feel that they determine the outcome of the game. Let the players determine it. I said, well, if you don't make the calls according to the rule book, you are having an impact on the outcome of the game. And it is the players who are the ones that are determining the outcome of the game because they're violating the rules. You need to call the fouls. The players will adjust to it. If you call it reasonably close, they're going to play. They're going to play that way. If you let them beat the hell out of one another, they're going to beat the hell out of one another. So the officials have a dramatic impact, but you have to make the calls regardless of the fact that it's the playoffs, regardless if it's the first minute of the game or it's the last minute of the game. You have to make the call that is required based upon the rule book, and they don't do that. And don't even get me started about carrying the basket. The guys carry the ball walking up the court now. Walking up the court. It's very difficult if you're a purist, which I think I probably am. They say old school, but I think old school basketball is the way the game was meant to be played. It's more fun to watch. It's more fun to play. You know, this one-on-one stuff that happens so often. I mean, teams are starting to get smart and realize that, hey, more passes, more cuts, more decisions you force the defense to make, the more likelihood the team's going to make a mistake. And if you have smart players, you capitalize on those mistakes. So that's the way I love watching the game. And a lot of it I don't like nowadays.
Do you think the three-point line has hurt or helped the NBA?
Well, it's like anything else. Too much of something is no good. If it's used judiciously and properly, I think it's a great asset. It makes the game more exciting, gives teams to get back in the game. And that's another area that I've been talking about recently since I've been watching it a little bit more closely, even though I'm not broadcasting, is that since 80% of the games, when you outscore the opponent from 3-point range, that team wins. That's a statistical thing. You can't, I mean, it's not like maybe, that's a stat. How in the world are these teams playing the kind of defense they play to allow so many wide open 3-point shots by the opposition? If you know statistically you have to win that battle to have an 80% chance of winning the game, wouldn't you think your focus would be on minimizing the number of open shots you're going to give that team from 3-point range? I can live with a guy doing a step back, hitting a three. I mean, that's no problem. I can live with that. And if you're going to leave a guy to help him, the guy's driving to the basket, you never leave a good 3-point shooter to give him a wide open look. You don't go under screens. You come over screens. You jump to good shooters. You put the ball into the hands of the guy who's not a good shooter. I'm just shocked by some of the defense being played by some of these teams, allowing so many wide open 3-point shots.
All right, let's go to Joel Embiid. Obviously, he was a determining factor in that series against Boston. Boston, again, Jason Tatum, obviously not the same player coming back off that knee injury here. In your opinion, Rick, give me your takeaway on Embiid when you watch him play. He spends more time on the floor than any other guy I've ever seen. He's always banged up. Ever since he won that MVP award, he's just not been the same. But yet, you talk about a 7-footer that shoots threes. I mean, he's such a skilled guy. You tell me your takeaway when you see him play.
Well, he's very talented. I mean, like you say, he has a myriad of skills that he can do, you know, to pull a defense out the center and shoot the 3-point shot. He can go inside and score. He's got great body control. I mean, some of the moves and things that he made to get some of the 3-point baskets that he winds up with, he can shoot the free throws reasonably well. So, yeah, his biggest problem has always been his health. I mean, you know, there's a lot of guys that fall into that category. I mean, one of the greatest of all time, God rest his soul, I can't believe we lost him, but Bill Walton, who became a great friend of mine. Bill Walton was another guy that with the injuries, I mean, God, how good would Bill Walton have been if he was healthy for his whole freaking career?
Oh,
so, and that's the issue that happens to Giannis. These other guys, the big guys seem to wind up getting hurt. I guess maybe you're better off being like the Joker and not doing all these things in a high flyer because you don't have to worry about maybe getting hurt as much, because the Joker, other than that one injury he had this season, has been relatively healthy because he's not doing all those crazy acrobatic things. Those guys that do that seem to put themselves in a much more precarious position where they can pick up these injuries. But Embiid healthy is as good a center as you would want to have. I mean, why would you not want to have him? But the problem is he going to stay healthy?
Let's go over to what you just said with Denver. What happened in Denver, Rick? I mean, obviously, do they have to blow that whole thing up, in your opinion?
Well, they didn't have all their people healthy. That's an important factor. Even with Orlando, I mean, I saw him when he was a young kid. I got to be an honorary coach for one of the games between the sophomores and the freshmen in the NBA in the All-Star weekend. And Franz Wagner, who I was impressed with, I mean, he's a 20-point-a-game scorer. He's out for this game. I mean, how critical is that? I mean, it's hard to lose a 20-point score in an important game. So, and the same thing with Denver. What was it? I'm trying to remember. I'll have a senior moment talking about. No, one of their top players was Gordon, was not available for. I mean, that makes a big deal. So injuries are such a critical element, and somebody has to step up. And occasionally, team gets lucky, and somebody steps up, and they're able to still get victorious. But you have to focus more than any other time. You have to be consistent with your defense. You just have to make the other team work as hard as possible defensively. You can't give up the second chance opportunity. You can't give up the opportunity going to the basket for easy layups. And that's a critical element in the playoffs. You must be consistent defensively.
Absolutely. We're going to continue more of our conversation with the legendary Rick Barry. We'll get his thoughts on some of these series also, and a little bit more also on Adam Silver running the NBA. We'll do that next. Rick Barry, keep it right here on SportsGrid.
You wouldn't have your ex officiate your wedding.
Do you, Jake? Liar? Cheater? Gaslighter?
So why have anyone but America's largest injury law firm handle your injury case? With over $30 billion recovered for our clients, there's a reason to go big.
Gaslighter, coitus crier, he's got more red flags than a bullfighter's attire.
Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
All right, truly one of the greatest of all time, NBA Hall of Famer, Rick Barry here with us. And we were just having a conversation because I told him back in the day, I was watching a clip of him with CBS, and he was covering an NBA Finals, and there he was in the locker room. And I just think you were ahead of your time, Rick, because as always, you always speak what's on your mind. And hey, you see the guys today. And I said this to you. I said, you were Charles Barkley before Charles Barkley. And you went, yeah, but I actually explained things. I mean, you were just ahead of your time, right?
Well, I was. I mean, back in those days, say I was too negative doing stuff. I wasn't negative. I was informative. I mean, there are good things that happen and bad things that happen in the game, and you need to talk about both of them. What I did learn from the experience is that accentuate the positive, okay? So you accentuate the positive, but you can't ignore the negative. And the thing is, it's not to be negative to be negative. It was negative to be informative and then tell you why. Okay, hey, it was a bad pass. Well, yeah, everybody saw it was a bad pass. Why was it a bad pass? What pass should have been thrown in that situation? It's a very fine line to walk as a color commentator. That's why I love doing play-by-play, which was fun, is that I don't want to be so basic to insult the intelligence of the people who really know the game, but I don't want to be so technical, which some guys are out there, and I won't mention names, that I lose the casual observer, because the majority of people who watch the games aren't really that well knowledgeable about the game. So you have to walk that fine line, and that's what I tried to do. But I love doing it. I have a hard time watching the game today because what they're talking about is not what I'm seeing.
So for you, do you think the analysts today do a good enough job at educating the viewer like myself?
No.
Again,
No,
the inside of the game.
not.
You don't think they do?
No, I think a lot of them don't. There's a lot of good ones out there. I'm not going to disparage anybody and say that, but a lot of them are not very good at what they do. They really are not. They're masters of the obvious. That's what I try to tell all my boys when they get into it. Don't be the master of the obvious. Everybody's seeing what you're seeing. Tell them about something that they didn't really see. Okay, educate them. Give them an opportunity to learn a little more about the game and see what happens. One quick question. I mean, how bad was the knee for Tatum in the game 7? I mean, it must have been really bad. I mean, it's for him not to play. That was that. And of course, that's what I say. Players. I mean, if Tatum plays, do you think Boston would have lost that? I don't necessarily think that would have happened.
So let's go over to the commissioner. I just asked Craig Carton this question. I'll ask you. You think Adam Silver does a good job at running the NBA?
Yeah, I think Adam's done a really nice job. It's a difficult job to be in. I mean, you have to please all of the owners. I mean, the owners are the one who control things. If they're not happy, you're not going to have a job. And I think Adam loves the game. He's been around it a lot. He learned a lot from David when he was the commissioner, as he was his assistant. But yeah, he's done a great job. But it's the game that really sells itself with the players played the way they need to. I was happy to see the All-Star game changed this year with the competition they had. Wemby was awesome as far as going out and actually making the guys play. So I'm happy. Hope that continues. But what I'm excited about now is we got 2 Game 7s tonight. I love Game 7s. I love when everything is on the line. I want to see how somebody plays when it's one game and you're gone. That's why the NCAA tournament is so exciting for people, because it's one game and out. You play a bad game, you're gone. Well, a Game 7 is like that now. You got to win or you're gone. So let's see what happens tonight, Detroit and Orlando. Let's see if Cade Cunningham, who I love, what he does. He and Tobias Harris are really carrying the load for them. They need to get a little bit more out of another player. But all the home, the home teams, and these Cavs, Raptors have won all of it. That's such a close series. I've never seen stats for 2 teams after 6 games be as close as they are. I mean, every statistic, field goals, rebounds, 3-point shooting, free throw shooting. I mean, they both scored 669 points in the games. The home teams won every game. That is an incredibly competitive one. Scotty Barnes has been awesome for the Raptors. And we'll see if James Harden's experience can help them, because he's got more experience than I think the entire Raptors team when it comes to playing in the playoffs. And he's been, I think this is his 8th Game 7 that he's going to participate in. So that should be a fun one to see what's going to happen.
How about the Lakers with LeBron? How impressed have you been with what he's done? Guys being out. Here's a guy he's averaging like 27 points. I mean, Rick, 8 assists during that series in the opening series against the Rockets. How impressed have you been?
Well, LeBron's one of the greatest players of all time, obviously, and certainly during his time, he's the preeminent 3. At his age, 41, of course, he does spend $1 million or more to keep himself in great shape, but he's been lucky not to have any really major injuries that would deter him from being able to play as long as he's played. So you have to admire and respect what he's done. There's never been a 41-year-old play at the level that he's playing at. So God bless him for that. Be interesting to see what happens. I'm looking forward to some of these upcoming series that are going to take place. There's some good matchups coming up, and I'm looking forward to see what Wemby's going to do. I mean, he falls into that anomaly category for me, guys who have played the position, different size, differently than anybody who's ever played. There's never been a guy his size to play the way that he's played, so that's going to be a fun one to see. And then you still got to worry about the champs. I mean, the champs took care of business, 4-0, OKC over the Suns. So San Antonio also took care of business, 4-1, and Minnesota had a tough battle with the Nuggets. We'll see how they do against the Lakers. So this is the beauty of the playoffs. But the games tonight are the ones I'm looking forward to more than anything. I love Game 7s in any series in any sport.
When you're looking at Wemby and what separates him, Rick, what makes him a different player? Because like you said, Wilt was a different type of player, right? Tremendously athletic. Wilt was just tremendous. Obviously, the free throws were an issue, but here's a 7-foot Olajuwon, it seems. He's the best defensive guy in the NBA right now. I mean, what separates him?
Well, his size, first of all. I mean, his height. I mean, there's never been a player that size that had the athleticism that he had. Olajuwon was an anomaly also, the way he played this position, because he was incredibly gifted athletically. Wilt was an incredible athlete as well, and strength but his Achilles was obviously his free throw shooting. Wemby right now is not a guy that's going to overpower guys, but he's got the size to be able to shoot over them. He's got the mobility and the athleticism to be able to do things that you would not expect a guy of his size to be able to do. He can shoot the 3-point shot. He can bring it up the floor. He's unbelievable. He's just an amazing player. I love watching him play. It's going to be fun to see what happens in that next series. But, I mean, how do you defend them? I mean, they've got the lob to the basket. You got to keep the guy away from the basket because they can throw it up there, 12 feet off the ground, and he can catch it and dunk it. But, yeah, I love watching him play. He's a fun guy. Just like LeBron's fun to watch and all the great players. But you still have to beat the defending champions, and they look pretty darn good right now. It's going to be great to see what happens. And, hey, listen, I hope everybody has a chance to watch the games, enjoy the games. And I wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll talk again. I know you got to finish the program and throw me out. That's okay.
You got it. Rick, we never throw you out. We welcome you back always. Thank you so much, my friend, the legendary Rick Barry. Sileo says next right here on SportsGrid. All right, folks, just come off the NFL draft. I got to say this to you about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Truly one of the greatest franchises in NFL history. 6 championships, all the fabulous winning. Steel curtain, terrible towels, legendary names. Mean Joe Green, Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, all the fabulous winning with the coaches, with Chuck Noll, and with Bill Cowher, and of course with Mike Tomlin. Folks, I'll tell you, make no mistake about it, the Steelers are in a different time in their franchise's history now. Here's a franchise that at one time was considered the gold standard when it came to winning. Now, they are an absolute joke in what they've done. You're battling out whether or not to bring back a 41-year-old Hiawassee guy who's hiding out in a cave somewhere to give you a smoke signal on whether or not he's going to be able to play in the 2026 season. You know, the Steelers parade around like they are the preeminent roster in the preeminent team in NFL history. Well, guess what, folks? They're closer to being the Jets. They're closer to being the Cardinals than they are to being a world champion football team that they once were. You know, there used to be a gold standard in Pittsburgh. That Lombardi trophies is what they strive for. Now it's 500. Hey, let's not have a losing season in Pittsburgh. You think about that organization and what they have been able to go through all these years. Go back to 1969 when they first hired Chuck Noll. The last time you had a poor coach in Pittsburgh, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. You've had more popes and you've had more presidents in the United States than you've had head football coach. They just recently hired Mike McCarthy to become the new head football coach there in Pittsburgh. Very un-Steeler-like. The organization is not in the same place that they once were, where championships were the gold standard. Look, they've gone through Mason Rudolphs, Justin Fields. They've not had a good transition from Ben Roethlisberger to where they are now, as we said, battling it out and dealing with a 41-year-old quarterback. What's happened in Pittsburgh is sad. It is no longer kind of the same way that the Miami Dolphins have kind of floundered a little bit. You know, back when I was a kid, the Miami Dolphins were also a gold standard team. They were a football team that had gone to 3 straight AFC championships and winning those 3, 2 Super Bowls, and then winning an undefeated season. They're gone. They're as good as the Cincinnati Bengals now. And that's kind of where the Pittsburgh Steelers are trending. And now you move on from Mike Tomlin to Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy is a fine coach, but very un-Steeler-like. You know, Art Rooney, when he made this great hire by getting Chuck Noll, who I think is maybe one of the more underrated coaches in NFL history, 4 Super Bowl championships, great teams that he built, all those great legacy teams, especially when the NFL was in the golden age, when you had no free agency. Noll was the guy who set the cement, poured the cement, and poured the foundation. Then you had Bill Cowher and what he was able to do by taking the baton from Noll. Then, of course, you had Mike Tomlin and what he had at the end of his career. But look at Mike Tomlin at the end of his career. Mike Tomlin had, without a doubt, 10 years of not winning in the postseason. The Pittsburgh Steelers are no longer the franchise that we used to go, that is one of the preeminent teams in all of pro football. It's a great fan base. It's great history. It has NFL all over it. But unfortunately, the Steelers are no longer that franchise. Now look, things end, and I get it. Things don't go on forever. Pittsburgh had great things going on with that franchise because of the most important word that you could have in any sport or in any business. You know what that is? Stability. They don't have stability. They don't have it in the general manager's office, and they don't have it in the head coach. And we don't see it any longer in personnel decisions that have been made there in Pittsburgh. This is not the same franchise. Man, how tough is that to say? The Steelers are closer to being the Cardinals and the New York Jets. This was a franchise every year that you had to worry about as being a team that could come out of the AFC and win a Super Bowl. Now, you're talking about whether or not you're going to be a 500 football team. And you're talking about dealing with a 41-year-old quarterback. Where in God's name has Pittsburgh fallen to? Pittsburgh is no longer the city where you were the champions and you were the terrible towels, the immaculate reception, all those great defenses that you had with the steel curtain. Those that make sense. We had one of the great American events, Kentucky Derby. That day is next, right here on SportsGrid. All right, here, hour number 2, and truly one of the truly legendary men in the history of thoroughbred racing. And I love the fact that we've been friends with him for a long time. He is the legendary Pat Day, and he joins us now. And we saw him yesterday. 150,000 folks were there at the Kentucky Derby there at Churchill Downs. Pat, I appreciate you doing this. Pat, you tell me what separates this race from any other race in thoroughbred history, the Kentucky Derby.
Teams, and now we got a professional football team and soccer. But, I think Louisville will always be known as Derby Town. And, when they start getting ready for the Derby, which they already are, immediately after the race yesterday, they start ramping up for next year. And 2 weeks out, we have Thunder over Louisville. And then the whole area, all of Southern Indiana, all of Kentucky, we all get excited and enthused. And it just, it gets focused on those 2 minutes, the fastest 2 minutes in sports. When we go from here to Maryland, it is just one of several events. And then when we go to New York, it's just an event. I mean, there's just so much other competition, I guess, for for people's interest. But here in Louisville, it is the event, and the city gets up for it. Churchill Downs gets prepared, and they put on a great show. And what an honor and a privilege to be a part of the Kentucky Derby and to be a part of the great sport of horse racing. Greatest game played outdoors, I might add.
I love that. Hey, Pat, let me throw this at you here. I compared this to being an official starter at Augusta. When I saw you go riders up, it reminded me of seeing Nicholas and Player and Tom Watson with like being the official starter of that event. What does that mean to you when you get to make that call there in front of all those people, in front of the entire world, when you're talking riders up? That must be a tremendous honor for you.
Oh, decidedly. And I'm honored to be mentioned in the with that group of men you just mentioned. Uh, to be mentioned in the same breath is pretty remarkable. But what a tremendous honor to be asked to do the Riders Up. I just can't tell you how much it meant to me, and what a joy and a privilege and a pleasure it was to be a part.
Golden Tempo's run 23-1 in the race yesterday. Pat, give me your take going from last to first in the style of race and how that horse ended up winning the Kentucky Derby yesterday.
Well, I think the early fractions said it all. Obviously Jose ran a marvelous race. He gave his horse a chance to. He knew the colt. He knows the colt. Gave him a chance to get his speed up underneath of him, and when he started picking him up, he come with a strong run and got the job done. Jose worked out a marvelous trip for him, rode a flawless race. The horse performed exceptionally well. My hat's off to Cherie DeVoe, the trainer, the first woman to ever win a Kentucky Derby. Congratulations, Cherie. Awesome job. Very proud of you and your entire team, and Jose, and of course the horse. What a marvelous horse.
When you have to go that distance, you're actually going further. I mean, the way that they went outside, back inside. I mean, Pat, what a taxing race that must have been for Golden Tempo there too, to be able to do that. What's that like when you're inside with all that traffic? And Pat, if I'm not mistaken, this was one of the biggest fields ever that the Derby's ever had for a race like this. I think 16 horses were in the gates at this time. What's that like going through, maneuvering through all that traffic when you're trying to win a race like this?
Well, it's like being on the expressway at rush hour. You got to be conscious and cognizant of everybody around you, and fortunately for the riders, everybody's paying attention. Unlike on the freeway, people get to. I know I never do this. You never look at your phone or text or anything like that while you're driving, right? But the riders are they're focused on everybody and everything that's going on around them, and trying to make a safe and flawless trip as best as they can. And as I said, Jose worked out a marvelous trip for the horse yesterday, and just so happy for him. What a remarkable feat! First woman to win the Kentucky Derby, and the first time, to my knowledge, that a brothers come to the wire together. The two Ortiz brothers were 1-2, and marvelous finish, and just a great day for horse racing.
Pat, also too, if I'm not mistaken, Jose Ortiz, he ends up winning the Kentucky Oaks and also the Derby in the same weekend. I mean, I think only 4 guys have ever done that. Pretty remarkable on what he accomplished there with that as well, no?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No, him and his brother are riding lights out exceptionally well, and I don't know who's representing them, responsible for getting the horses that they ride. I mean, obviously they all work together, but he or she, whoever it is that's representing them, is doing an awesome job. I understand it's the same agent that works for both of them, and for both Jose and Irad, and just doing a great job of securing the horses that they ride. Obviously, you can't drive a Volkswagen in a Cadillac race and expect to win. So they're being well mounted, but they're certainly make the most of all their opportunities.
Renegades race. If you had to do something over again, if you were on the horse and you were on the mount there for Renegade, what went down with Renegade? Obviously, one of the favorites to win the Derby. What happened with Renegade's run?
I think he just got outfooted the last part of the race. Watching the overhead shot, you can see clearly they were last and next to last at the 5/8 pole. Going to the half-mile pole, they started picking him up, and Jose was following Irad. I'm sure he had his eye on him, knowing that he was, obviously you got to beat them all to win, but Renegade was a horse. He was a favorite. He was a horse to beat. And so Jose was following him around the turn, and he just had more horse at the finish. I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything, Dan, that I could have done or any rider could have done other than what Irad done to get the victory. He was just on the second best horse yesterday.
Pat, I couldn't wait to ask you this question. I didn't know this until a couple days ago, and I want you to explain this to me. The technology and the training that we see with these horses and what you put these horses through to get the modern medicine in them and all the things that go on with training a thoroughbred. How come since 1973, nobody's been able to break those records of Secretariat in the Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont? I mean, Pat, in every sport, technology and training and nutrition and everything makes athletes better. How come no one's been able to take those records down from Secretariat?
Well, Secretariat was a freak of nature. Truly, he was. I mean, he was a specimen of a thoroughbred, but he had a heart that was somewhat larger than an average heart, a horse's heart, which I think enabled him to do a lot of what he done. But he was a gifted. He was a freak of nature. I don't know how else to say it. To do what he done in the Derby, to do what he done in the Preakness. When he made that move around the first turn, I mean, he circled the field and went to the lead up the backside. I mean, come on, and then just kept running. And in the Belmont, my goodness, every quarter faster than the previous, and the finish up the way he did. That's just a freak of nature, truly. And I don't know that we'll ever see another one like that in our lifetime.
Absolutely. 224 at Belmont, which will never be broken. Hey, folks, my great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the #1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason. Family owned and family run. I tell you about the family in Pennsylvania that was initially offered $650K. They got nearly $30 million in settlement. Or the family in Florida that was initially offered $350,000. They got nearly $12 million in settlement. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. That's forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. And do me a favor. You tell them Big Sales sent you. We're going to talk more with Hall of Famer jockey Pat Day. Get his thoughts on Preakness coming up, the second leg of the Triple Crown. And we'll see again if Golden Tempo can make it happen 2 in a row. We'll do that next on SportsGrid. We are truly blessed to be able to talk to one of the greatest jockeys, Hall of Fame jockey, Pat Dye here. We're talking Kentucky Derby. We're also talking about the 3 stakes races coming up here. We're going to talk Preakness here in a second. And also, we're going to talk Belmont here with Pat Dye. Pat, what, again, of all the races that you've won 9 Triple Crown races, if I'm not mistaken, of the stakes races. In your opinion, what was your favorite? Kentucky Derby, Preakness, or Belmont?
Oh gosh, Dan, they're all very special. Obviously, they're legs of the Triple Crown, but I think the Derby. It's everybody. The Derby, the Kentucky Derby, is synonymous with horse racing and American around the world, I believe. As I made my travels around the world before I won the Kentucky Derby in '92 on Little ET, I would meet people, and as soon as they discovered that I was a jockey and not a basketball player, they would they would inquire as to whether, without a doubt, they would say, "You're a jockey. Have you ever won the Kentucky Derby?" Now they don't know anything else about horse racing. They don't know which end of the horse to put the bridle on, but they know about the Kentucky Derby, and so that was the highlight of my racing career, was winning the Derby for Mr. Lynn Whiting and Cal Partee, the owner, aboard Little ET when we collaborated back in '92. It was just, we'd won other races that were money-wise meant more to us and probably meant more to my career than winning the Derby at that stage in my career. But they all paled in comparison to the absolute joy of crossing that finish line first.
Where's Breeders' Cup in that for you? I mean, obviously you've won this as well. Where's Breeders' Cup in this for a jockey?
Well, I was very fortunate to win the Preakness several times, and it's a great race, and I was tremendously honored to have done that. The Breeders' Cup, of course, when it started back in '84, when I was fortunate enough to ride wild again and win the Breeders' Cup Classic, I believe that race probably was the biggest shot in the arm that my career got as far as catapulting me to the top level. After that, I started receiving opportunities to ride some of the best horses in America all over the country, and was tremendously blessed to do that. Today, the Breeders' Cup obviously is 2 days, 14 races, I think, $30 million in purses or more that they are distributed in the course of those races. And certainly a big boon to the horse racing industry.
Pat, what's the tougher of the 3 stakes races, in your opinion, to win? Kentucky Derby, Preakness, or Belmont?
Well, they say the Belmont because it's 1.5 miles. I was fortunate to have won that 3 times. One with Easy Goer. He ran the second fastest Belmont only to Secretariat. Wow. Easy Goer was the best horse I ever rode, so because of the distance, and horses in this country rarely run that far. We have very few races that go 1.5 miles, and so it's probably the most grueling. And what makes it so grueling is that you have the Derby, and then 2 weeks later the Preakness, and then you have 3 weeks to recover, and you're back into Belmont. So it's at the tail end of the Triple Crown. Obviously, the Derby is 1.25 miles. The Preakness 1 3/16 miles. You shorten up a little bit, and then you stretch out to 1.5 miles 3 weeks later. So it's all 3 of them together makes it that much more difficult.
Next one up is obviously the Preakness. Golden Tempo has the first leg here. What's different about this race and the strategy about this race compared to the Derby in Belmont? I mean, obviously, as you said, which is crazy, is that, you've got a couple weeks to recover, then you got to get back, and you've got to go through another grueling test here with the Preakness. But Pat, what separates this race from the other 2?
Well, obviously you can't win the Triple Crown if you don't win the first. This is the first leg, and as we had alluded to earlier, it's the race that's synonymous with horse racing in America and around the world, and which just kind of puts it in a category all its own. But of course, and looking forward, in 2 weeks we got the Preakness coming up, a 1/16 of a mile shorter. Some question about this colt. Obviously he just got up in the final strides of the race yesterday, going a mile and a quarter. Now they're backing up a little bit. But as I was listening to an interview this morning with Cherie, and she said that, this colt's maturing. He's getting better. And he'll probably be a little bit better horse coming into the Preakness than he was in the Derby, and hopefully he continues to move forward, and he'll be able to get the next leg also.
Pat, do you agree that the difference with these races and the most versatile horses win, right? As you said, the grueling Belmont with those sweeping turns that you have there with that race, and then obviously the fast track that you have with the Kentucky Derby. Is this what makes those special Triple Crown racing horses so special? Is that you've got to be able to have the versatility to be able to have a horse that can handle all three of these races?
Well, absolutely. That's why there's not been a whole lot of them. I don't know the number, but it's a small number of horses that have been able to put together three great races and secure the Triple Crown. So it's pretty grueling. It's testing on man and beast alike, and but it certainly makes for interesting watching and participating while I was in the saddle.
Last one here for you, the Pat Day Mile at Churchill Downs. What an honor, huh, Pat? Another great honor put on you there. You must have loved that.
Well, when Mr. Flannery called me and he said, Pat, he said, the Derby trial, which is generally run on the first Saturday, the last Saturday in April, the opening day of Churchill Downs. Years ago, many trainers would use that for a prep. They'd run on that Saturday a mile and come back the next Saturday for the Derby, but they had quit doing that, and it sort of lost its place. And Mr. Flannery said, we're considering moving that to Derby Day, put it on the undercard, and with your permission, we'd like to call it the Pat Day Mile. I said, permission? How about my blessings? I mean, what a tremendous honor to have a race named after you on the undercard, a Kentucky Derby. Obviously, the greatest day in racing in America, and just enjoyed. Just so pleased and honored that they would recognize me like that.
Absolutely. Well, I want to make sure I throw this out. Great love to you and your wife, and I appreciate you taking time. You make sure we tell her, make sure she recovers. And Pat, thank you so much. God bless. Thank you so much for doing this. We'll talk a little Cleveland Browns. We'll do that next, right here on SportsGrid. You know, there's always certainties in life, death and taxes, right? Oh, and by the way, the Cleveland Browns sucking. There's always certainties. Let me give you a little number here for you. Ever since the Cleveland Browns got the expansion team to go back to Cleveland and start their football team in 1999, here's a number for you. They have had 40 different starting quarterbacks in Cleveland since 1999. 40 in 32 years. How in God's name are you going to have any continuity or any kind of success? And it plays out, they've only had 4 winning seasons in that 32 years. Baker Mayfield was one of those guys that ended up delivering a playoff win. And if you had to do it all over again, wouldn't you like to have that Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Cleveland Browns, back again, letting Baker Mayfield out of the building? This guy's getting ready to sign a $50 million a year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But where is Jimmy Haslam and Todd Monken, the new head coach? They've got to determine who their next starting quarterback is. Very Browns-like. He was asked the question, Todd Monken, who's your starter right now and who's at the top of the depth chart? I'm not there yet, is basically what Todd Monken said. Which means, so you've got Dylan Gabriel, you've got Shedeur Sanders, and you've got Deshaun Watson. Those 3 dudes don't equal a quarterback. Those 3 dudes aren't going to move the needle on you winning. The starting quarterback in Cleveland is not a guy who's going to carry that franchise to winning pastures. Dylan Gabriel, here's a guy that was drafted the same year that Shedeur Sanders was. Shedeur Sanders is a publicity guy that a lot of the media people want to see have success in Cleveland. Shedeur Sanders is not the answer. How in God's name does a guy with 7 touchdown passes and 10 interceptions make it to a Pro Bowl? He makes it to a Pro Bowl because you've got media folks wanting for this thing to be a success. And then on the other hand, you've got the guy with over 38 different sexual misconduct accusations against him in Deshaun Watson. How in God's name are you going to pick a person to be the face of your franchise when it's those 3 stiffs? Jimmy Haslam is one of the worst owners in all of pro football. There's no doubt if you don't get the position right at quarterback, head coach, you have no chance for success. Go around the league. Take a look at Kansas City. Clark Hunt, the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs. What does he have? Brett Veach, a fabulous general manager. And you have, of course, Patrick Mahomes. You've got to get that trifecta right, or you're not going to have success. Go to Los Angeles with the Rams. You've got Stan Kroenke, who owns the team. You've got Les Snead and Kevin Demoff, who are in the front office. And, of course, you've got Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. You ownership, general manager, if you get that right, the chances of you getting the quarterback position right, which will help your franchise go on and win. I mentioned it earlier. Look at the Jets. The Jets have one of the worst owners in pro football in Woody Johnson. They can't get the general manager right, and they can't get the quarterback right. You put Geno Smith back in the locker. You put him back in the locker room. This is a guy who got his ass kicked, and not one teammate stood up for him when he was in the locker room. And now you bring him back and you put him back in the locker room. Hey, it's the same environment. For you to have success in the NFL, stability matters, man. This is why when you get a play calling head coach, look at what you have in Green Bay. Green Bay has had 3 different quarterbacks over the last 37 years take 97% of the quarterback snaps. Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and now Jordan Love. Think of the stability that you get in Green Bay when you make the decision and you get that position right. 97% of the snaps taken in Green Bay by a quarterback in Green Bay is by 3 dudes. That's why Green Bay gets it right. Green Bay wins Green Bay is always in the conversation for one of the better teams in the NFL. They get the head coach right. Matt LaFleur is a hell of a play caller. And, of course, management in how they run the Packers. Cleveland will never get this right. Hey, Jimmy Haslam, time to sell the football team, dude. Cleveland will not win. They will not get it right because they can't get the head coach right. They can't get the quarterback right. And most importantly, they can't get the owner right. They're not going to win in Cleveland. Dylan Gabriel, Shador Sanders, and Deshaun Watson. Where are you going? Let's go to George Kurtz. We will talk some Major League Baseball and some NHL next, right here on SportsGrid.
Betting growth was up about 40% year over year in March, so some of that obviously was the NCAA tournament, but a lot of that is because DraftKings and FanDuel were coming to town and bringing a lot of money with them. It was about $87 million was bet in the month of March, which is not only a March record, but it's a record for Arkansas in general. And it was really interesting to note too, DraftKings and FanDuel were only active for about 12 days.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
There is a pick tonight that Gabe has that, to some degree, I find completely outrageous. Then I looked at it a second longer, and it might be a really smart angle.
I like to test them a little bit.
I like that.
To test them a little
I
bit.
like that a lot.
Oh, yeah, come on, you don't know? You don't know this team name? You should. You're in the sports business.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
When Ruben Bain's name got called, this is the greatest moment, one of the greatest moments of your life. You're going to look back at this tape all the time and watch when you got drafted and had his arm length. I said, are you shitting me? You're supposed to have a highlight here, not a low light. I was like, oh my God, man, that's insane. That was just incredible. And I thought it was so classless.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
You have something that does not warrant tinkering with, but you have the perfect sporting event. And all you're gonna do by watering it down with more bad teams, less competitive teams, more blowouts, is to ruin something that we love.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
One of my favorite times during the show is talk to George Kurtz because he's Mr. Versatility. We're going to talk a little Major League Baseball, then we're going to talk a little NHL with him. He joins us now here on the program here. George, let's talk some Major League Baseball first out of the gate. Plus 30 games. For you, when do you get assessment on a team? Because, again, Major League Baseball goes in ebb and flows. You know, you could start out not very good. You could still get a chance to make up. Is there a time of the season for you that you look at and go, okay, 30 games, 40 games, post All-Star game? When do you start to get a sense of what you're looking at when you see a Major League Baseball team?
See, I think what you have to people have to realize, especially living here in the Northeast, the month of April is cold, all right, or cool, right? So it's not great baseball weather. So I don't think you can count really April all that much here. So I think you need to give teams May. So I think the first easy landmark for me, or pole in the ground here, would be Memorial Day, right? You give them to the holiday there. It's about 6-7 weeks into the season. You figure 45 games there. So it's close to a quarter of the season done there. So I think Memorial Day is where you start to. If I'm a GM, that's where I'm judging my team. Okay, this ain't working. This guy's not hitting. This guy's not pitching. We need to make a move here. I think a lot of teams do that in Major League Baseball as well. They judge their team through the first 40 games or so. And then they realize, okay, I need this, I need that. And then from Memorial Day to July 4th, they're trying to come up with plans here. Not necessarily making deals, but okay, who can we deal with? Who's out of it? And they think from July 4th now to a trade deadline is where they go bananas, then trying to make moves. So for me, it's Memorial Day. I'm still willing to give my players a couple of more weeks to figure out, is it just a slow start or is this just going to be a bad year?
How do you go from being the greatest owner in Red Sox history with John Henry to arguably being the worst owner in Red Sox history? I mean, this guy reversed the curse of the babe And all of a sudden now you're having people screaming in Boston, sell the team. They end up blowing out Alex Cora, who was, by the way, how about this one, George? 48 hours later, he's offered the Phillies job. So again, was it knee-jerk? What's happening in Boston? I mean, John Henry, he's hearing it right now from the Red Sox faithful. It is not going well in Boston.
Well, I've been hearing it for a while, right? They let Mookie Betts go pretty much for nothing here, and he's a superstar here. The Rafael Devers trade last year, I think, was a very good trade for Boston to get out of that contract there. I don't think that's going to age well at all, and San Francisco are paying for it already, literally there. I mean, I heard an interesting stat yesterday, Dan. For the first time since 2004, the Red Sox don't have a World Series champion in their dugout. And that's like, wow. You realize how many championships they've won here, but since they fired everybody or traded everybody, hey, they're gone here. There seems to be a power grab to me, that Breslow wanted complete control. We've heard this before. They wanted to get rid of everybody anyway when he first came over here, but he was talked out of it. You said it wasn't even 48 hours, Dan. I think it was the next morning where Dombrowski's like, hey, Alex, you want to come manage? And by the way, I don't think that Thompson was fired because they wanted Cora. Thompson had his own issues there in Philadelphia. And we know Mendoza with the Mets probably has to go too. Not necessarily their fault, mind you. A GM deserves a lot of blame here too, which they always do, by the way. But the manager's always the first person here. Surprised they fired Cora. I mean, you want to argue who the best manager in baseball is? Fine, we could do that all day. But he's certainly top 5, right? I mean, I'm a Yankee fan. Would have no problem if Alex Cora wants to come to the Bronx. He's not going to. I fully believe next year in spring training, he'll be the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies. I think Alex said, hey, what? I can have the summer off, get paid, and still get whatever job I want next year? Sounds good. I'll be on a beach, boys.
Yeah, I love because he's a former Miami Hurricane, and I text him the same thing, and I'm like, he goes, I just wanted to, exactly what you said, George. I just want to spend time with my family, have an opportunity because I've been doing this grind for the last couple of years. So do you think you think he is going to take that Dombrowski offer and we'll see him in Clearwater next year? But do you think if everything kind of goes status quo the way it is right now in New York, David Stearns, whether he survives or not, you think he could think about maybe the Mets job? He's got some ties to the Anaheim Angels as well. You think it is the Phillies for Alex Cora next year?
I think right now they're the leader. I don't think money's going to be an issue. All right, Philadelphia can pay him, the Mets can pay him, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. Oh, I'm going to make $10 million more with the Mets. I don't think that's there. It really comes down to what does Alex think? What team is closer? He's got very close with Dombrowski. We know that. Now you can make an argument that the Phillies are an old team; they're on their way down. Which I'll make that argument. By the way, I saw that coming into the season, I was worried about them. But where are the Mets, Dan? I don't even know what to tell you. All right, like the Phillies old, they may be coming on the way down. Are the Mets? I mean, you got Soto, you got Lindor, you have all sort of turmoil. Why did Stearns get rid of Alonso and Nemo yet keep Lindor? So there's a lot of garbage going on there. Maybe Alex doesn't want to deal with that. Maybe you don't want to deal with New York. You think the Boston media is tough? New York's not going to be any friendlier. Especially everything the Mets have gone through the last couple of years. I think it comes down to where does Alex want to go? And there'll be another team or two that shakes out, right? There always is, where he'll be, maybe he's going to this team, that team. I think right now, if I was going to place a bet right now, a speculative market, which is all big right now, it'd be Philadelphia, but I wouldn't guarantee it. The Mets will certainly be in play.
David Stearns, was it a mistake with Bo Bichette?
Yes. I mean, Bo's a good player, don't get me wrong, but he was a bad defensive player, right? Nobody wanted him at shortstop, and nobody wanted him at shortstop when he played on turf. So it wasn't going to work anywhere on grass, right? And then you're moving him to third base, completely different position, all right? And you're putting him in New York, right? That's a problem. You don't get off to a good start, you're going to have issues. Plus, remember, we're taking him out of Toronto, that bandbox they played in. They moved the fences in for crying out loud. And it was already a bandbox, and now you're putting him in City, which is more of a neutral to Pitchers Park there. So, yeah, I always was worried about this. I'm not saying he's not a good player. I think he's a good player, but I think he's vastly overpaid. And at the Mets think he's going to be the guy to sort of, shake them out of their doldrums here, or he's going to be the protection for Juan Soto. I'll pitch to Bo Bichette any day of the week rather than Soto.
Tell me why you think there's only a few teams in the American League above 500 right now with a 500 record. I mean, I think there's only 3 or 4 teams right now that are above 500. I mean, is it parity? That word is usually used for the NFL. What's happened here and why really you're not seeing any team? The Yankees probably with their starting pitching and what Judge is doing right now by hitting the long souvenir. Why aren't there really a lot of winning teams right now, or a team that really hasn't separated himself? I know it's early, George, but It just seems that everybody's hanging around one another right now, and they're hanging around that Mendoza line of 500.
But it was sort of really the same thing last year as well, right? I mean, okay, Toronto was really good last year. They've got to throw slow stuff. They've got a truckload of injuries, and they lost Bo Bichette, which was a loss for them. All right, Boston, all right, they've imploded. All right, they've got all sorts of issues there. Detroit, Cleveland, I mean, they were a little bit better than average teams anyway. I don't think we were expecting much of them. Kansas City's a little bit of a surprise, Dan. I thought they would play better this year. Maybe they still will. It is early here. We're only a month plus in here, but I expected more out of them. My biggest disappointment is probably Seattle. You know, Seattle's always that, in my mind, that one player short, and it's not pitcher. They need a hitter, you know, a good hitter. You know, I think they would be right there with the Yankees because they can pitch with Wu and Gilbert and Kirby and Bryce Miller when he comes back in a couple of weeks. I know Castillo. I know I left somebody out there. Great starting staff, solid bullpen. One hitter short there for Seattle. Texas, you know, there are a lot of okay teams. It's sort of what you're insinuating around 500. They're okay, but where's the big threat? Right? Right now, it does look like the Yankees could run away and hide. That pitching staff you mentioned is pitching to a little bit over a 2 ERA from the starting pitchers here. 2! That's ridiculous in today's game, right? And they got reinforcements coming. Rodon will be back next week. Garrett Cole the week after that. The Yankees don't know who they're going to take out of the rotation. Will Warren's got a 2.39 ERA, may have to go. Ryan Weathers, 3.03, may have to go. Yankees having it's not even, by the way, it doesn't even include the youngsters, Lorang and Rodriguez, who are top prospects in baseball here. The Yankees are loaded with pitching.
30 seconds. Are you buying the Cubs?
Yes, I think they're not a great team, good team, and they have money. They can go fix what they need. Remember, they didn't have Suzuki for the first couple of weeks also here. I like the lineup. I mean, I wish they had that superstar there. I do, but I believe in the Cubs. They could use another pitcher as well here. I think they'll get that at the deadline. I'm a believer in the Cubs. Palencia back this week.
Absolutely there, too. And I would think also, if you want to add, maybe the Braves have been one of the surprises, too, in the first half of the season with that starting pitching, right, George? I mean, pretty amazing on what they've done. I believe, if I'm not mistaken right now, I think they got the best record in the majors right now, do the Atlanta Braves. Old John Sherrill stuff going on. More with George Kurtz. We're going to talk NHL next, right here on SportsGrid.
I know you did it. Talk. I'm innocent. Got the wrong guy. It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. Okay, it was me. I did it.
Bringing an owl to an interrogation? That's a power move.
Every time.
Yeah. Hiring America's largest injury law firm for your injury? That's also a power move. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
I'm sorry, but I got to continue the conversation that George Kurtz and I just had. So when I was a young kid, I used to go to the old Yankee Stadium, and it was like pea green seats. Okay. Then when they played at Shea for about a year and a half or 2 years, maybe they played at Shea when they were making and renovating the new place. And I just asked George Kurtz about the new place. I haven't been to the new Yankee Stadium yet. I'm not sure they still sell Cracker Jacks. I'm hoping they do sell the Cracker Jack. George, I mean, the new place, do you like the new place versus the old places? Because I love those old Yankee Stadiums.
As far as comfort, it's hard to beat the new Yankee Stadium, right? Because you walk out there, it's wide open, so you can see the field as soon as you walk in, which is beautiful. Not just through the tunnels of the old Yankee Stadium. The sight lines are better, no doubt. So it's nice, but there's no Death Valley. I know it's $3.99 to left center. It's just not the same thing as the old Yankee Stadium, which I love. I think the Yankees should have gone back to 431 in left center, not 466 back in the Joe DiMaggio days, but 431 during Dave Winfield and stuff like. I mean, that to me is Yankee Stadium. So I'll always love the old Yankee Stadium. Always, we grew up with that. But the new one is, as far as comfort, for your average fan, the new one is better. But I think for big fan, huge fans, I think we prefer the older Yankee Stadium. I know I did. It was sort of a tear in my eye when they tore that down. It was Yankee Stadium. This is not Yankee Stadium to me.
Yeah, I know. People don't remember, but Monument Park used to actually be in play. Back in left center. It was in play when you went to the games there. All right. So let's go to hockey here. I mean, I can't wait to see this series. 7 games. Vasilevsky was so spectacular in that game 6 the other night at the Bell Center in Montreal. It's game 7. If Vasilevsky plays like that, the Habs are going to be in trouble here. But how do you see this Tampa Bay Lightning and the Montreal Canadiens game 7 today?
What is the best 2 words in sports? Game
7.
All right. It is the best 2 words. Basketball, baseball, football, whatever it might be. Game 7. I think once again, Game 6, Vasilevsky was a brick wall. That one pair of saves he made, I think, Cole Caulfield was just fantastic here. Obviously, if he plays like that again, it's over. Well, let's not forget, by the way, Dobes played pretty well too. All right, he's played great for a rookie coming in here. That being said, it's Game 7. It's in Tampa. Kucherov, Point, Gensel, Vasilevsky. I can name a host of others. Been there, done that. And Hedman might play tonight. I don't think so, but he might. He might come back tonight. Cooper's going to play that probably close to the vest here. But they've been there. These are men. They've been there, done that. Canadians, they're the kids. Caulfield, Suzuki, Hudson. They haven't been there. You wonder they're going to be a little nervous, gripping that stick a little tight tonight, Dan. So I like the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight. Low scoring game. I don't think it's going to be high scoring. I think both teams are going to be very nervous about making a mistake early on. I do not think the refs are going to have much of an impact here. It's going to be let them play. We don't want to decide the game here. I like the Lightning in another low-scoring game. I don't know about 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. Smells about right to me. I like the Lightning to advance.
Okay, so I'll ask you this, though. And we see a lot of guys move around in the NHL a lot. If they get knocked out, the Tampa Bay Lightning, this will be the 4th year in a row they get knocked out in the opening round. If you're John Cooper and you're the management team there with the Lightning, I'm not suggesting here in any way, George, that you move on from John Cooper. He's 10th all-time in postseason wins. But, George, I mean, you got to ask the question. I mean, that old line, are you losing the voices in the room here? You got so much talent on that team. They get knocked out 4th year in a row. That's quite a statement for a team who's been 2-12 at home in the playoffs over the last 14 games.
Oh, I don't think you're crazy for asking this. We're going to hear this. All right, if they lose tonight, we're going to hear this tomorrow and during the week that, once again, everything you just said, they can't win anymore, they're too old, whatever it might be, changes need to be made. And maybe it will be the voice of a locker room. Personally, I think they'd be nuts. We just talked about Alex Cora and the Boston Red Sox. Cooper, he'll have a job tomorrow if he were to move on. He could be any coach he wants in the NHL here. So I don't. And by the way, if I'm another coach of an NHL team and John Cooper's let go, I'm like, oh no, the last thing you want, because then your job's in jeopardy. All right, so I don't think they would move on, but I think it's a fair question to ask. I do, and we're going to hear it. We were hearing it during the season anyway when things are slowed down, or the year before when things haven't gone well. So yeah, if they would lose in the first round again, you mentioned it 4 years in a row. What is the old saying? Once, all right, it happens twice, a coincidence, 3 times a pattern. What's 4? So yeah, I think we'll hear it. I don't think he's going anywhere, but I certainly wouldn't bet on it either. Maybe he wants out too. We don't know how he's feeling. I don't think so, but maybe he does.
Rob Brindamore and that Carolina Hurricane team, boy, 3-0 against the Flyers, and boy, they look great in their opening round. I mean, are they the best team in the Eastern Conference right now, in your opinion?
If you would have asked me a couple of weeks ago, and I'm pretty sure you did, I would have said Tampa, and I would have had Carolina too. Yeah, I'm going to have to reverse that now. All right. I mean, a couple of reasons here. They look like a different team, Dan. This is not the same playoff team we've seen the past couple of years. They just look different. Maybe it's the moves they made during the offseason, but what maybe more importantly, all of a sudden, Frederick Anderson can play during the playoffs. That was always one of their biggest issues. Anderson came up small, right? He wasn't the same goalie during the playoffs as he was during the regular season. Now, maybe the other time he missed during the regular season with injury helped in a weird way because he didn't have to play 60 games. But they look like a different team right now. They've only let up 5 goals in 5 playoff games. I know they haven't had the greatest of competition here. I understand that. But it's 5 goals in 5 playoff games. I don't care. They look really good now. They are the team to beat in the East.
You know, I asked you this a couple weeks ago, and I think we're starting to see it, the addition of John Tortorella. Boy, that looks like a completely different Vegas team now with him there. And again, I know the competition that they've played, but here's a Stanley Cup winning coach, and I believe a former Jack Adams winner, Coach of the Year. I mean, you tell me. I mean, the impact that he's had, and especially in this Duck series here, Vegas looks different with him there.
Well, there's no doubt John Tortorella is a great coach. He's turned around so many teams. He wears out quickly. All right, he's never going to be at someplace for 6, 7, 8 years, but he can turn around an organization. I mean, he's done it over and over again. I mean, listen, personally, I love John Tortorella. He's great on TV. He's great in the interviews. He's one of the few head coaches. I'm listening to the post-game press conference because you never know what he's going to say. He's fun. All right, he's certainly not afraid of anybody here. He's done – listen, that Vegas team, Dan, looked like a dead in the water before he came in. They couldn't beat anybody. And then all of a sudden, I know the schedule is easy. I get it. But still, he came in there, bolt of energy here. I didn't think they'd beat Utah. I thought they were going to have trouble there. They would beat Utah. I don't think they can go as far as beating Colorado or Minnesota, but I think they get that far. I think they'll get to the conference finals, but it should be a fun series versus Anaheim. But I think Vegas, once again, experience, same thing. I think they'll beat Anaheim, sort of similar with Utah. They'll win in 6. Great job by Tortorella.
Absolutely. And if you remember right, when he was in Vancouver, the owner came in, and of course he started throwing hands with the owner. And that's one of the reasons he ended up getting blown out. Thank you, George. Appreciate it. Final thoughts. We'll hit on that next, right here on SportsGrid.
Betting growth was up about 40% year over year in March. So some of that obviously was the NCAA tournament, but a lot of that is because DraftKings and FanDuel were coming to town and bringing a lot of money with them. It was about $87 million was bet in the month of March, which is not only a March record, but it's a record for Arkansas in general. And it was really interesting to note, too, DraftKings and FanDuel were only active for about 12 days.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
There is a pick tonight that Gabe has that, to some degree, I find completely outrageous. Then I looked at it a second longer, and it might be a really smart angle.
I like to test them a little bit.
I like that.
To test them a little
I
bit.
like that a lot.
Oh, you don't know? You don't know this team name? You should. You're in the sports business.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
When Ruben Bain's name got called, this is the greatest moment, one of the greatest moments of your life. You're going to look back at this tape all the time and watch when you got drafted and had his arm length. I said, are you shitting me? You're supposed to have a highlight here, not a low light. I was like, oh my God, man, that's insane. That was just incredible. And I thought it was so classless.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
You have something that does not warrant tinkering with, but you have the perfect sporting event. And all you're gonna do by watering it down with more bad teams, less competitive teams, more blowouts, is to ruin something that we love.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
So this Brendan Sorsby story going on with the Texas Tech Red Raiders is very interesting. Obviously, he's supposedly on a leave to help him out with his gambling habit. So Texas Tech had signed him to a $6 million nil deal. Reportedly, obviously, all the issues that went on with him betting at high school. Also, when he was a backup quarterback with the Indiana Hoosiers. He came out a couple days ago saying that, we need time away from the program. And Texas Tech so granted that. All of a sudden now, we're hearing he may be looking at going through the supplemental draft. The supplemental draft is an off draft. Like if you remember back in the day, USFL players went into a supplemental draft like Reggie White and also Steve Young. And yours truly, I went into a supplemental draft as well. This is how the supplemental draft works. If you get drafted in the supplemental draft in 2026, whatever that pick is, and I'll just use my pick, that was the 56th player taken in the 1988 draft. 87, I was able to go, and I was third. I was the third pick with Brian Bosworth and Chris Carter would go on to be a Hall of Famer. The following year in 88, the Buccaneers lost that third round pick by selecting me. Now, here's the issue here that Sorsby has. This is surrounding gambling. You're going into the National Football League where they prohibit players from being involved at all in any way with gambling. When you walk into an NFL locker room, there's a giant player in the locker room with full gear on, and it says right there, gambling is prohibited in any way, shape, or form, and you will be suspended. You're going into a supplemental draft thinking that you're going to roll into an NFL team with the tag of having an issue in gambling, and the league is going to be cool with that? Absolutely no way. I get it. The NFL today is surrounding with gambling. We see so many betting ways that fans can make place bets and also prop bets on how you can bet on the game. But when it comes to the players, they are sticklers when it comes to having gambling around the players. Here's something else with the supplemental draft for the kid. It's one of the worst things I ever did in my life. If I had to do this all over again, okay, for me, I would never have gone into the supplemental draft. I would have waited because here was my case. On Friday, I was a Miami Hurricane, and I was getting ready to play the Florida Gators that Saturday. That Sunday, I would end up playing against the Chicago Bears and Walter Payton. So in a matter of 48 hours, I went from being a college kid to a pro kid, and there I was playing Tampa Stadium against the Chicago Bears in 1987. I was not prepared mentally nor physically prepared to understand the rigors of what it takes to play in the NFL. You're not around your players. You don't know playbook, all of that. Name me a player that has gone in a supplemental draft that has gone on, and I'm talking not the USFL supplemental draft. I'm talking more so a supplemental draft. What? Chris Carter and Bernie Kosar? Name me another player that has gone in the supplemental draft to gone on and had great success or played over a long period of time. It's not a way to go. And the kid's got gambling surrounding him. This is not going to be conducive to the kid getting into the National Football League and starting his NFL career. If I were him, I'd wait a year. I'd wait until next year's draft in 2027 to get yourself an opportunity to play. Now, again, it's different today also because now you have the practice roster. You get a chance of 71 guys making an NFL football team. But to go in as a supplemental draft, and especially with the tag of gambling, folks, we're going to see more of this stuff with gambling. Is that the kind of player an organization is going to draft that the NFL prohibits gambling in any way, shape, or form? They don't even want you betting on turtle races, let alone betting on college and pro games. You think you're going to get drafted going into the NFL with gambling as one of the reasons you went into the supplemental draft? I went into the supplemental draft because I so-called exhausted my eligibility. Had nothing to do with gambling. This kid's going to go into the supplemental draft and think that an NFL team, let's draft a kid who got thrown out of college basically for gambling, and you're going to bring that into your organization? No way. The kid should wait until next year's draft, clean everything up that has been said about him with this entire situation, go to his rehab his reputation, and then go to the NFL combines and get a shot to go in the NFL way. Go through the combines and give yourself a chance to at least have a puncher's chance of making it in the NFL. The supplemental draft is a landmine, and it never really works out for players. Trust me when I tell you, I'm an example of that. One of the more difficult ways to try to get into the National Football League. Folks, I appreciate you. We will see you next weekend. Have a great week, and we'll see you on the flip side.